Hello and welcome to DWeb Decoded. I'm Danny O'Brien. I'm Senior Fellow at the Filecoin Foundation and your, guest interviewer for this particular episode. And we're in San Francisco. And one of the things that gives us an opportunity to do is talk live without weird Zoom windowings with one of our favorite projects that we work with, and that's the Prelinger Archive that's based here in the Bay Area. So thanks for coming and talk to us, Rick and Megan Prelinger. How are you doing?
Hi, Danny. Good to see you. Thank you for having us.
Yes, no problem at all. Well, thank you for having us, because we're actually in at least one part of the sprawling Prelinger empire, right? Which is here in Richmond. Maybe, Rick, can you just sort of describe like what the Prelinger Archive is? What are all the things that you do? Because you have all these sort of slightly connected things that have different names, but they all have your name on them.
Sure. The Prelinger Archives is an archives of film, cameras, projectors, theaters, all of that. It's material that wasn't made in Hollywood. It's home movies, it's industrial and advertising and educational films, which are promoting products, ways of thinking, ways of life, propaganda, miseducation, that kind of thing. It's also a lot of film material that most people threw away, outtakes, material from films that were important back when they were made and now are nothing but trash to the people who made them, but they're visionary, amazing documents to us and incredibly useful for makers today. That's the archives. And then, you want to talk about the library and just mention adjacent? Is that what your question?
Yeah. What's the library, Megan?
We also have an ally organization. We also have a separate organization called Prelinger Library. That's a print library of tens of thousands of books, documents, printed ephemera, zines, and maps that serves a worldwide community of researchers, activists, and makers in San Francisco.
I think there's a connection here, though, because when I came to San Francisco in 1999, I met Brewster Kahle, and he said,
Who writes the internet?
Brewster, the founder of the Internet Archive, and we were on the phone, and he said, "I don't know why you called me, but how can I help?" And I said, "Well, I have this film archives," and he says, "Oh." Last night at dinner, we were talking about where we could get a film archives to put online for free. How would you like to put your archives online for free? This is the very definition of a speed date. The pitch happened in less than a minute.
Right.
And
I've been waiting for you all my life.
Right.
Thank
and
you
I started stuttering.
calling.
I was stuttering. I didn't know how to respond to that. I came from New York, where information wants to be expensive.
Right.
But gradually, I realized that he was right, that we should give it away. And we put stuff online for free. Beginning in 2000, film, free download, almost no restrictions, Creative Commons, or the first Creative Commons collection, and it changed our lives. And that led to the idea of having a library where access to our books was available to anybody. And ultimately, what we're doing now grows out of this sense that archives are meant to be shared. And it's been an amazing ride so far.
Let me try and describe, because before we got really into the weeds with working with you, I knew Prelinger, I think, and we'll talk about this a little bit in the Bay Area, it's kind of a household name. And the vibe is definitely ephemera, right? So if you've ever seen what in some cut up TV show or something like that, there's always a bit where they have someone, from the 50s going, and atomic power will rule the world, or, warnings about the dangers of marijuana or stuff like that. That kind of ephemera, public information film, public domain stuff where there wasn't necessarily a copyright. Am I right in thinking that basically the people making those shows come to the Prelinger Archive to find that stuff?
Yes.
Is that that's the business model, right? That's how you were for many years. Yeah. So the idea that Brewster sort of inserted into your head is well, while you're doing that, why don't you give all the way this content for free? like I see now why you're sort of saying that was you had to pause in your speed date to think about that. But has that done well by you? I mean, has that worked out?
If somebody's going to use your material, they have to be able to find it. They have to know that you're there. And the Internet Archive gave us a worldwide visibility.
Right.
And hundreds of thousands, maybe millions of new collaborators,
Right.
that we will never meet or know, most of them. And that's helped us stay alive.
Yeah. Yeah. And so this idea in the Bay Area, you being like a local name, right? I mean,
If I could speak for myself,
Yeah.
there's been a free culture movement in the Bay Area that predates our partnership with Internet Archive, and to which I have a history of having been a humble contributor in the years that predate everything that Rick just spoke about. And the idea that information wants to be free and that knowledge sharing is the model of the future was an idea that I was with colleagues already, really in humble terms, already working on in the 1990s, already contributing to EFF and whatnot. But that frame of reference was not only familiar to me, but it was already a hub of advocacy. And so in my role as emerging co-director of the Film Archives, I was positioned to advocate for that.
so you were the internal free culture mole kind of going, yeah, we should totally do this.
Just saying, yes.
I mean,
And I'd also had a day job as a copyrights researcher. So I had a pretty keen sensibility of how that landscape existed in regulatory terms and in ways that supported our development of the free culture offerings.
so drilling down a little bit again, talking about the kind of vibe of Prelinger. So we have like the public domain films, right? So public domain means that there isn't any copyright in it. So federal stuff, some material that where people just didn't re-register the copyright.
Most
Or never registered.
Yeah, most films in the United States, once you put to the side Hollywood film and TV and sports and all that, put aside pop culture, most films in that situation up to a certain point are out of copyright. 500,000 films are out of copyright.
And does that mean that how does so when I think of films, I often think about it in terms of preservation, it being kind of a ticking time bomb, right? Because celluloid,
Yes.
Yeah.
it's this stuff is not fixed for all time, right? So is there a sense in which things that aren't protected by copyright, that means you could make a copy of it, right? That
Yes.
means you could preserve it,
Yeah.
as opposed to stuff which is copyrighted.
Which is all too often robbed of the opportunity to be conserved because conservation activities can involve duplication, and people will, out of a climate of fear around copyright restriction, will refrain from engaging in that kind of duplication activity. And films can become lost.
And you were right to talk about a ticking time bomb. It's a cliche, but it's really true. Film prior to 1951, a lot of it was nitrate, it was explosive, there's that. But safety film, which was most of our collection.
Okay, wait.
Well, you know,
There literally are a ticking time bomb. I mean,
There's a whole mythology about old film, because it used to be flammable.
right.
Nitrate film. They haven't made that since 1951. Films from the safety era, from the 20s on, to 1920s on, I should say, suffer from vinegar syndrome, which is a decay of the film base that is very kind of, when it's there because it throws off acetic acid and it smells like an inedible salad that's been sitting for a long time. And as film gets older, more film is subject to vinegar syndrome if it's not kept very cold and very dry. And we're finding that even stuff we scanned 5 to 7 years ago is beginning to decay, and hence the urgency of this project. Digital preservation is taking over from what used to be the gold standard, film to film.
Now you would make a physical,
right. But now digital preservation is launching into the lead as something that's expensive but accessible and urgent.
So, which brings us to this project, which is essentially we're trying to, and the foundation is supporting you in this, digitally preserve as much film as you can get your mitts on, right? And is there any particular kind of categories of film that you're trying to immortalize with this?
Absolutely. I mean, we're within the social impact umbrella of projects that the foundation supports, and that's, you know, within our origin story as well, that we're preserving underreported historical narratives. We're changing the face of what history looks like by scanning film that was left on the cutting room floor, by scanning film that was made by people who never had access to transfer technologies,
Right.
etc.
So, and I can think this again brings me back to like one of these sort of Bay Area traditions that you're associated with, which is the Lost Landscapes show. So I'm just going to explain this because I go every year.
Go for it.
So let me see if I get it straight. You can correct me. Every year, I and hundreds of other San Franciscans gather together. It's usually near Christmas. It's usually in that kind of like
It's the new Nutcracker.
right. We go down to the middle of downtown San Francisco, and then the lights go down. Rick and you go up, and then we see like basically a city home movie show. Right, like it's a collection of home videos, home movies from the very beginnings of when people first got a little camera to the modern era, but all around the Bay Area. So there's just a chorus of people yelping kind of like, that's my house, right? But at the same time, you get this insight into the hidden history, the secret history of San Francisco. I think one of my favorite moments, and I think this is a recurring theme in because you do this every year with different footage, is seeing huge labor protests,
Yes.
right, in San Francisco,
Yes.
which I had no idea about. But of course, like, you know, the history of San Francisco is a sort of military naval base and you know, the heart of the war effort and so forth. But at the same time, it had like decades of really quite strong political action that you wouldn't necessarily see in the official historical archives.
It was a union town. It was a town filled with political and social struggle. I mean, you know, we of course lead the country. We're the vanguard, and there's a lot of footage of it. And so, yeah, movies, material that people would not have seen.
So where do you get it from? How do you find like 100 years of home movies?
Shamelessly asking people if they grew up in San Francisco and if their family shot home movies. These days, people come to us. Word has gone out about this project, and we are flooded with family home movies. And sometimes it's like Tahoe, but sometimes it's growing up in working class San Francisco. Sometimes it's celebrations. Sometimes it's, you know, individuals witnessing events that will take place in the history books. It's fun. This year's the 20th year, 20th anniversary of Lost Landscape San Francisco. So it will be a special show.
Oh, wow.
Talking about what it will be yet. But
Well, this is the other part, right?
It will be unforgettable.
Yeah, you're always sitting there going, "Wow, I hope I have what I would."
Megan and I talk with people. People often come in the library. We try to reach out and we scan material. You'll see how all that happens, and just try every year to build up a big body of local material.
And is this the sort of content that you're now able or trying to digitize sort of en masse? Is this when you talk about like the stuff that wouldn't normally get digitized and preserved in sort of big national archives, this is the sort of material?
Well, our foundation-funded project has a much wider perspective. It has regional, national, and to some extent global remit to preserve histories that elsewhere would never be preserved. And within that, our regional and local history here is, of course, a aspect of special interest to us personally. But this project, within the scope of what the foundation is funding, is really for world memory.
Right. I mean, I was thinking as you were saying this, I was like, well, it must not be quite so parochial, but like, so do you feel like, are there other cities that have those shows, right? Or have people seen what you do in San Francisco and gone, we can do that in, Chicago or Paris, or that you get to hear about?
So I've done them in New York, Los Angeles, Oakland, where else? Detroit. I did it in Detroit for quite a number of years. There are people who've done pop-up, like one-time events in Baltimore and in Boston and in other cities like that. Every city should be doing it. It's just a question of who's crazy enough, really, to spend their time.
There's a Center for Home Movies that conducts home movie day events that bring community members to digitize their home movies and project them.
Yeah.
And one next year will be in Santa Fe, New Mexico.
But it's 160 places around the globe. There's like 80 of them in Japan, for example, local home movie days. But here, every day is home movie day. And we also partner with organizations. So right now we're partnering with Center for Asian American Media that has a project called Memories to Light, where they're looking for Asian family home movies that we will scan, and then they put them up online together with family narratives. Sometimes they work with Asian American artists as well to make something out of them. That's a project that's got some longevity. We've been working on for about 8 years. We're working with Mission Media Arts that shot this astonishing footage in the 70s of lowriders, of political activity in the Mission and in Chinatown and other neighborhoods. The struggles around a group of youth, Los Siete de la Raza, music and theater on the streets. That's 80 hours of material we've scanned. They're presenting and it's beginning to show up online. It's very beautiful.
I think it's really interesting to me because, like, for a big chunk of my life at least, people always say that the winners write history. And I've always felt like, well, that's true. And also the writers write history. Like, if you are the winning writers, you get to define what everything is. And one of the things I really noticed that the internet changed is that everybody could, like, their own talk of the story, whether they were the winners or the losers. But it's hard to kind of back project that. It's hard to look back in time. Like, and I know a lot of historians spend a lot of time trying to get like different viewpoints than the dominant one. But the fact that,
that's what this project is about.
Right.
It's
Right.
back mapping the gaze of history and shifting the frame, bringing people, landscapes, and events into the frame that have been left out of institutional sponsored histories that tended to advocate for people and organizations that hold power.
So we were talking about Brian, who works at FF to kind of help scan all of these things, and we were going, oh, we mustn't get too deep in the details about this, but I kind of want to, right? Even though, Brian, I'm sorry you're not here. Well, maybe we'll talk to you more. But like, how do you? Like, we see these reels around, like, what's the process by which you take something like this and then scan it? Is there a certain resolution you scan it in? Or like, how do you decide, like, make those decisions? How do you color match? Like, is there...
Well, in Brian's role as a decentralized web, getting the scanned bits into the chain, on-chain, so we can leave that there.
Mm-hmm.
And really what we're doing here is making decisions about how to scan the film,
Right.
which is what you're asking. And
Well, go through the process if you...
well, material comes in through any of 1,000 ways, whether through partners, scouts, or our own holdings. And then we kind of take a gander at it. We assess it. We do an off-the-cuff assessment of its likely historical significance. There is a lot in the metadata, the context, who brought it to us, what are the physical properties of the item itself, what's some metadata embedded in is there writing on the can or there notes in the can? Give us clues about what to prioritize or not for digitization. Thanks to the foundation, we have a beautiful film-to-bits transfer workstation that the camera can take a look at. And then the question is, what's the resolution? Is it a 4K, 5K, or 6K scan? Again, the foundation support, the machines have beautiful cameras that take beautiful frame by frame photographs of every frame in a reel and knit individual images together to form a motion picture file.
We've never had access to such good scanning technology. We're doing the same. We're there with Library of Congress, UCLA, et cetera, et cetera.
And I think when we were first talking about this, I remember one of the things we were talking about is how to give access to that kind of technology more broadly, because I think there were two parts we were kicking around. I mean, things have changed a little bit now, but like one of them was, okay, what does it mean to suddenly have like exabytes of potential storage, right? And like being able to store things at high resolution. And the other thing was, is the idea that we would be able to provide access as you've done, right? Not only so that people can come to you with this technology, but in the same way as the Internet Archive spent a fair bit of time trying to democratize book scanning as well, like how we could make this a resource that, should really be in your local public library, right?
One of the things we learned from the Internet Archive project, which is down 25 years ago, was that we could change the economy of history. That history, the raw material of history didn't always have to be controlled by people who controlled the material. We could put stuff online and make it available for free, and a high school student would have access to the same material that a PBS would. And, a new American could come to their own synthesis about the history of this country. That's the kind of thing we want to enable. It isn't so simple, though. Some people come here out of an IT background and they say, geez, you should be able to scan faster, or geez, you should be able to turn everything into a JPEG that's like 1080 high by 1,000,000 long and then just cut it all up in software. And the problem is this is necessarily artisanal. We've got about 120 different kinds of original film. Each has a different workflow. And Megan was talking about the process. We also prepare the film, we inspect it, we add leader. It isn't rocket science, but it's labor intensive, and it takes some creativity and knowledge.
And you're also sort of in this conversation with like future archivists and future librarians, right? Where you're sort of going, this is what we know.
This is what we can do.
I mean, presumably after the Lost Landscape shows, like mysteries are resolved for you, where someone will come up and say, actually, I know what that is a picture of.
Many times. The only thing that's not solved is the mystery of why humans make the same mistakes over and over again.
In filming or just in
Well, in filming it's fun, because home movies, some home movies are the best thing they do is record the tremors of the cameraman. But
right. So okay, so one thing, so we'll go and look at like that process. I do want to bring us back to something that you brought up, right, which is free culture in general, right? The idea of not only kind of as a goal, making it knowledge available to everyone, but also, how to make a living from that, how to prosper under those situations. And one of the things I love about the Prelinger, first up, the Prelinger Library is now much more popular. I understand than it was when I visited, because it's a small library. I mean, it's you go up some stairs and you go through, and then there's this sort of wonderland of content, right? But I go there and there's usually like 5 people there on a good day, and now you're kind of
2025 has brought what we term the TikTok tsunami, the TTT. Or an inspired maker named Ash Her created a 60-second video that has gone viral and has been viewed over 250,000 times. And our this summer average visitor numbers just derived from the popularity of that extremely enticing, cleverly made video. Our public open days have 10, 20, 30, 40 to 50 drop-in visitors on an open day instead of a half dozen to a dozen.
And is it okay if I recommend, if somebody's coming to San Francisco, that they should drop by? Because it really is.
With fingers crossed, I'd say by all means.
Because the stuff that you have, I was, as we were talking about this podcast, I was sort of going, I can't describe it, but it's all the things I'm interested in, right? Where you go in and you've got zines, so the free zine culture where people would write little magazines themselves and then send them, or like ask for a buck, and it would go through the mail network, which I always think of as like the proto-internet. So I was in England in the 90s or 80s, and I would get these little things from America, and there were no other intimate person-to-person communications short of
Right.
pen pal letters.
Chain letters.
Right. So all of that's kind of ephemera, but like there's a lot of that stored. You have computer magazines from the 1950s, which I was sitting there going, I grew up on these magazines and like they changed my life, but I never seen them around.
Where would you find them?
Right. You just threw them away at the end because it's out of date technology. What else is there that, like, what are the things that are bringing in the TikTok to tsunami?
Well, not unlike the film archives, it's really kind of a print material analog to the film archives. What was made by people, even if it was institutionally produced, may have had unexposed writers, unexposed photographers, unexposed artists, the history of labor in, trade periodicals.
Right.
We have 700 runs of periodical titles.
So these are trade magazines,
Yes.
like, Plumbing Monthly or something.
And
Exactly.
candy industry.
And the industry.
So when I'm looking at the computer magazines, that's because that's where my
Well, we
heart
like that
lives.
too.
And then, true. But then there are other people coming in because, like, they want to know.
Read ice cream review.
Right.
But history of television, history of non-theatrical film, such as we're in the middle of here, but the print analog, the old distribution catalogs, what are some titles we should think about trying to identify, or better yet, the outtakes of those titles. So there's an intersection there with the film archives that's huge. Also, histories of aviation and aerospace, landscape, social change, social justice movements.
All in a pretty tiny room.
We have 1,700 square feet
Oh, wow. But
and 12-foot high shelves.
A lot of visual material too. People come for eye candy. A lot of artists come for material to appropriate. We've got a huge map collection, which is really interesting because every map is like a novel, and it's if you read it closely.
So, I mean, in many ways, you're this bridge between kind of the physical and the digital in this. Like, there are points where the format changes, and you're sort of acting as the people shepherding that.
Yeah, I mean, we feel like digital does certain jobs really, really well, and physical materials do other jobs really, really well. Why can't we have both?
We have to have both.
Why? We're being pressed to make choices, to throw a light switch, and we shouldn't have to make those choices. Our library caters to emerging people. Most of our audience is under 30. These are mostly people who didn't grow up in houses surrounded with books. There's something special about coming to see us, and people make the most of that opportunity. They read together. They sit and look at books together. They say, hey, look at this. People collaborate around the table. It's a noisy space. The word library doesn't need to get
It really doesn't.
I think Megan coined the word thinking of it as a workshop, and that's the kind of ethos we really love.
People walk in and say, oh, I always wondered where all the books went.
Yeah.
Because they've seen book collections only in media representations of book collections.
Pictures of books online.
And never in real life.
Right.
And history of social change, like I can't believe this movement happened, and here are these people.
People can look at it, can leaf through an original Black Panther Party newspaper, which otherwise would be something you pay $300 for on eBay, or you saw
Parts magazine.
Yeah.
And so when I was there, I think the last time it was like there was a Wikipedia party, right? Where people,
Wikimedia edit upon.
right, where people would take these things. So everything on Wikipedia has to refer to something that is a published thing. And so it's very important to make this connection between obscure published things and Wikimedia. It describes what the internet is going to know, and presumably AI is going to know about that past, but that's a complement to the physical product. It's not the idea that we're just scanning, right? It's that we're contextualizing both things. We're contextualizing what you have physically and contextualizing what we have digitally. So, okay.
Which brings up one other thing about what we do here. Thanks to our grant, we're able to spend a lot of time writing and editing deep metadata on our films.
Right.
So we have a lot of films that come out of great complex social moments. Let's take a film from 60s and 70s social activism, or let's take a home movie from an African-American family. We try to describe sensitively, thoughtfully, and accurately. And so we've spent time developing terminology that's accurate and respectful. For identities, for harms, for historical issues that are complex. And we describe material in great detail visually because it creates a spine for all the films.
Right.
And we think metadata lasts a long time. We think this metadata will be around for 100 years.
Yeah.
And we want people to be able to find, it's hard to find moving images, and so we want to have a lot of hooks that are on the web and point to our repositories.
And we also want to offer a vocabulary for the future that's independent of federal opinions about what vocabularies should be and what vocabularies should encompass and describe, and vocabularies that will feed into knowledge systems that have yet to be built.
Right. So a lot of what we're talking about is, it's natural in movie history, but I think it's one of the things that the Prelinger Archive is so good at, is catching the moment of things that are just beginning to become history. What do you think about the present era? If there's like a new Prelinger, one of the people that the TikTok tsunami is looking for what they would want to start thinking about keeping in the modern age, what should you be scurrying away? What should you be pack-ratting?
What's the infrastructure of civil society? When we have to rebuild civil society, what are we going to need to know? Democracy's Library is a big part of that.
That's the Internet Archives
Internet
project.
Archives project to conserve government records. We're going to need to know also for everything that's been subject to a takedown for different reasons, especially politically motivated. Where are those being backed up? And also for every media maker, because the proliferation of devices in the last 15 years has turned everyone into a media maker. When people, again, this speaks to the urgency of the DWeb space, because when people have their media that they've personally produced and it's backed up to the cloud, it's backed up to AWS, and people refer to that as an archive, I'd say urgently is to intervene in the assumption that people have of what an archive is and what does it mean to back material up outside of big data systems.
Yeah, really, really important. And right now, a lot of, so if you're thinking about what needs to be saved, we know we can't save everything at the moment. It's just impossible, even logistically, if we had the storage. When we think about a decision, when something comes to mind that we should exclude, that we shouldn't collect, we should question that decision and try to save something of every medium, something from every place, something from every media form, because most decisions, appraisal decisions like that look pretty funny after 10 or 15 years because none of us are clairvoyant.
So a kind of a sample approach. But I also think relocating the idea of archival responsibility with the public.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah, we should all be archivists. This is our responsibility. We should all be
social actors as archivists and do what we do best, which is an area that we're,
if we're a maven about a topic, we have an obligation to do our best to save it. And it's a true sense of decentralization.
Yeah. Remembering our own history.
Yeah.
Well, Megan, Rick Prelinger, thank you so much for saving the modern world, as it were. And
Thank you, Danny.
It's a pleasure.
Thank you for
Yeah.
having us, and thank you, Filecoin Foundation, for the decentralized web. To get the correct one.
Yeah.
FFDW. Thank you, FFDW.
Thank you.